Hello and welcome everybody. So today we have Vincent Costello. Morning, Vincent.
Morning.
And we have Sasha Phillips. Morning, Sasha.
Hello.
Hiya. Vincent's the tax director at Assets and Sasha is the tax manager at Assets. Thank you once again, guys. Hopefully everyone really enjoyed and really found the last podcast as informative. I certainly did, and I certainly learned a lot. And I've gone away and literally just said, what do I need to do? So thanks for that, guys. Today, there is a lot we are going to be talking about on various different podcasts over the next few weeks, which is just valuable information to anybody. Yeah. I always say to everybody, and it's really important that we say this, that always get your own tax advice.
Yeah.
These guys will absolutely help you out, but you've got to get independent tax advice because. We do have a couple of related stories where in the past people hadn't had tax advice and thought they could do it better, and it's turned out to be an absolutely horrible experience that's cost them thousands and thousands of pounds, which, I think I might have laid at that point to always get your own tax advice, but it is important. So today we're talking about options for capital gains tax. It's a horrible word for a lot of people, capital gains tax. It's a tax on a tax. It's a bit like stamp duty, you're paying it for why?
Yeah.
So tax, I love it, hate it, that's what, unfortunately, we have to do.
Keeps us in a job though.
Yeah.
Exactly. I suppose the headline of this is, pay now. What are the options, regards trusts? The landlord has several properties in the landlord's own name. Do they have an option, or what are the beneficial options to put into a company? Potential sort of future alignment of capital gains tax rates with sort of income tax rates, but it's giving people the options. Are there options? What can they do?
Sure.
That kind of thing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So, if we kick off with trusts, there's loads to think about with trusts, so I think we won't go too into that. Maybe that's a separate podcast.
Good idea. You guys have to do that, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I do think what I can say is that if landlords are thinking about trusts, what is the reasoning behind that? So, is it because they're thinking from an inheritance tax perspective, they want to get that asset out of their estate?
Okay.
Because there isn't really any other reason for using a trust, I don't think, unless it's for that. So I think if they're looking at trusts, the reason they'd be doing it is to get it out of their estate because they can't benefit from it.
Okay.
So they couldn't put it into a trust and then retain the income.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
so they cannot continue to benefit from that asset as soon as it's gone into the trust.
So where does the rent go into the trust, does it?
It goes into the trust and then it'd be for the beneficiaries.
Okay.
So, and the landlord could choose who those beneficiaries are, but they have to be comfortable that they are giving away that asset. It's not, they can't retain any.
Yeah,
any
they're giving away their rights,
Their rights.
income stream.
Yeah.
Fine.
So if they don't do that, they don't exclude themselves. It doesn't work from an inheritance tax point.
That's right.
So it becomes a bit of a wasted vehicle.
Yeah.
So it's probably best not giving two mates in the pub then, is it?
A lot of the conversations we have is from my mate in the pub said this.
We get that quite a lot. Alexander, we get that quite a lot. You should do that, really? Yeah. I'm fine with that, but I think. But just explaining a trust, I know we'll do a session on this, but just a very, very brief overview.
Yeah.
Because capital gains tax, I think, is important from a potential when do you... Oh, excuse me. That's really annoying. Capital gains tax. This should be a bleeper, guys. Apologies. We'll have this as a bleeper. So capital gains tax is quite important, and I'm guessing, and please advise me this, but when you put something in a trust, do you pay capital gains tax if you put something in a trust? Who would you, we mentioned you have to be careful who you put it in the trust to, so it could be your wife, it could be your children, it could be your brother, but someone who you know.
Yeah.
And the money that the property generates, the rent, could that money that is paid to trust be used for repairs and paying off?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rental business runs as normal.
But
so the day-to-day management of it it's exactly the same.
Yeah, exactly, that's right. So, but essentially when you put it into a trust, you're the settlor that is putting that into the trust.
Okay, yeah,
You're giving it to the trustees, so they're people that you trust
okay, yeah,
to look after it, and that could be yourself and your wife and whoever you pick.
okay,
Beneficiaries are the people who you choose to benefit eventually from that property,
Okay.
and there are different types of trusts, we won't get into that today.
yes, yeah.
But that is essentially what the vehicle looks like. Now, it still runs the same as a rental property business, so you'd still have income and outgoings for maintenance and everything, but essentially the money that's in that trust then, the profit, is then for the benefit of whoever those beneficiaries are.
Okay.
So now,
Okay.
in terms of getting something into a trust,
Yes.
there is capital gains tax on getting something into a trust because it's a deemed disposal at market value for the person that's giving that asset away.
Okay, yeah.
So
Whether you pay tax or not is a choice.
is a choice, that's right. So when you put it into the trust, there's actually two things that you need to think about. So lifetime inheritance tax charge and capital gains tax.
Right.
Now, because there is a lifetime inheritance tax charge, and that's at 20 or 25%, depending on who pays the tax, that's the reason why you choose the capital gains tax, because there's a relief that then says you can defer paying the capital gains tax.
Okay.
So it's a little bit confusing, but essentially they're the two taxes that you need to think about when you're putting something into a trust.
Which is even more important now on one of the previous podcasts that we did about if capital gains tax were to increase.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you were to put something into a trust today, you'd
Yeah.
pay today's CGT.
Maybe.
Maybe.
You might
Well,
not want
you-
to pay capital
yeah,
gains
okay,
tax.
you could defer
So
that,
you,
yeah.
you will
Defer.
pay inheritance tax,
Yeah, okay,
and then you can choose to defer the capital gains tax.
okay.
So the trust would receive that asset with,
Yeah.
with your base cost that you acquired the asset for.
Okay,
So-
okay. That's interesting. It's
Yeah.
definitely worthwhile considering.
Yeah, yeah.
But with someone who's got a pretty big property portfolio though, if we're talking anything more than £500,000,
Yeah,
then the immediate IHT charge puts people off going to put it into a trust.
Yeah.
okay.
It might be a
you've
bit
got
obstructive.
Yeah, because although you're
Yeah.
holding the capital gains tax over,
Yeah,
that IHT is immediate,
And that's due
and you've
now.
not got any
Yeah.
cash to pay it because everything's tied up in the properties.
Yeah.
fine. And how quick is IHT inheritance
Well,
tax of getting in there?
6
months.
6 months.
6 months.
Okay,
So,
and that's a 25%.
so it's 25 for the person who's putting it in.
Okay,
Depends who pays the tax.
If the trust is paying it, which obviously the trust has only got the property, it's got no liquid funds,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
would be 20%.
okay, right.
This
So-
is why we need a whole
Yeah.
new website.
Absolutely, yeah. That's all my mindful. Okay, fine. But again, I mean, I think the sort of CGT can be deferred, but
Yes.
will that be at today's rate? So we said we're going to defer it.
No.
No,
No,
so
because it's a deferral, it's not a crystallisation and a postponement.
Yeah.
It's a deferment. So if you defer at today's rate at 24%,
Yeah.
and then the trust sells it next year when potential CGT rates are
have
40,
happened, yeah,
you pay at the 40.
yeah,
Fine. Okay.
So you're not postponing the tax, you're actually deferring the tax.
Fine. Okay.
There's
Yeah.
a bit of a difference
Yeah,
between
absolutely. There's a
the two.
massive
Yeah,
difference,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
especially if CGT goes up,
Yeah.
which it potentially will do.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, and you're right, we need to do another session on this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, they are, you know, they're great for asset protection, aren't they? If you're looking at,
Yeah.
for inheritance tax purposes, then
Yeah.
trusts are fantastic. So we'll do
Because
another
some
session.
people set up trust for asset protection, so if they want to give assets to children, but the children are not quite ready to have the assets yet,
Yes.
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
the children are married and you want to protect it somewhat towards divorce,
Okay.
and those kind of
Yeah.
things,
Okay.
then having a trust is a great vehicle to protect that asset.
See that as well.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that might be a consideration
Yeah, absolutely.
for some people.
Yeah.
And it's a very hot topic as well. Very hot topic.
Divorce rates are going up.
Yeah. So we've got trusts. Let's say, obviously, we talked about. Do you sell now and pay capital gains tax at today's rate, or do you sell when you sell you'll pay whatever? The previous podcast said we need to pay within 60 days capital gains tax if you sell that asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
At whatever prevailing rate it is at that day
Yeah.
it completes. So landlords who have properties in their own name,
Yeah.
which you know, that's how people used to buy properties. You know,
Yeah.
Mr. Jones goes out and buys a property, and you know, and it stays in his name forever and a day.
Yeah.
But there's more and more people now looking at putting those assets into a company.
Yeah.
What are the features? What are the benefits? What are the downsides to? I mean, is that a realistic option?
It is, and
Yeah.
it's something we deal with on a regular basis.
Okay.
The answer is there's no one size fits all with what we call property incorporation, property business incorporations. If you were coming to me as a landlord and you were looking to buy new property,
Yeah.
I'd probably say put that in a limited company straight away.
Okay.
The problem we've got is a lot of people have got existing portfolios,
Yeah.
and it's what do we do with that?
Okay.
Now, if it's a sole trader, if it's an individual on their own,
Yeah.
putting it into a limited company, as long as they satisfy certain business tests, are they operating it as a business rather than just a passive investment, they're doing more than just collecting rent every month.
Yeah.
If they satisfy those tests and they've got enough properties, then you can hold over again, like Sasha explained with the trusts. You can actually what you do is you incorporate the business in exchange for shares in the new company.
Okay. Yeah.
So we look at what the gain is on the properties,
Yeah.
and that reduces the equity value basically of what your shares are worth.
Okay.
So the company gets the company gets the automatic uplift on the property values,
Yeah.
and then they only pay tax on the difference of what he's worth on incorporation and
Okay.
what they eventually sell them for.
Okay.
So that's really attractive. So
Yeah, absolutely.
you can do that.
Yeah.
The problem you've got is you don't get any kind of relief against stamp duty.
Okay.
Because you're
Okay.
exchanging the properties
Yeah.
in exchange for, say you've got £1 million worth of equity in your property,
Yeah.
and you exchange it for shares. That is £1 million worth of shares. That's classed as consideration for stamp duty,
Okay.
Yeah.
and that's
Of course it is.
Of
course it is.
course it is. So that's the negative side of
Yeah.
that kind of incorporation. But sometimes you've got to look long term. If my SDLT exposure is this on day one,
Yeah.
but in
Yeah.
10 years' time, the tax savings I've had on corporation tax over income tax,
Yeah.
I can eat into that, and then by the 10 year, I've broke even,
Yeah.
and then I'm
Yeah.
into profit.
Yeah.
Then you've got to look at it long term.
But SCLT is payable if you
Oh,
transfer
yes.
the ownership into the company name.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
Now there is a
Yeah.
situation where you may have SDLT relief, but it's only usually in a partnership situation. So if husband, wife or business associates have got rental portfolios,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
is a relief for partnerships
Yeah.
from having to pay stamp duty on incorporation.
Okay, I mean, there's certainly some brilliant benefits there.
Yeah.
There really
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's definitely worthwhile getting some advice. You know, certainly we're talking, we're talking about CGT, we're talking about the stamp duty, land tax, and everything else. And I suppose getting your ducks in a row and find out
Yeah.
what's it going to cost. And if I do it today, in 10 years' time,
What does it look like?
you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, we've got some great graphs over the last sort of 60, 70 years of more than that, but it's actually it's property prices and what happens to property.
Yeah.
And again, I'm no financial advisor, but you know, everyone says bricks and mortar is one of the best investments.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Because it has just gone like yes, you know, it's
Yeah.
a bit of a dip, but it
Yeah.
has done that.
Yeah.
And it is continuing to do that. You know, in the last 5 years as well. So you know, there's definitely worth get some advice on that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so for a corporate vehicle, I mean, if you take the CGT holdovers and the potential SDLT issue, if you take that aside,
Yeah.
they're an attractive, this is why I said, well, if you come to me now
Yeah.
with an idea in mind, I want to buy residential property,
Yeah.
I would say limited company straight away.
Okay.
The SDLT on an acquisition for a limited company and a person
Yeah.
who's now got an additional property, it's the same. So you're not,
Okay.
it's no different from a SDLT point, so
Yeah.
that's neutral.
Yes.
But from a corporate tax or income tax perspective, it's more advantageous because the introduction of the finance interest restriction relief,
Yeah.
which limits individual landlords from accessing higher rate and additional rate tax relief on their mortgage interest, is now restricted to just a plain 20%.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That restriction doesn't apply in
Yeah.
limited company situations. So there's no restriction on that relief. They get full relief.
Okay. Well,
So that's
okay.
one of the big advantages of
Yeah.
wanting
Yeah,
to put a
massive.
company in place for holding residential property.
Yeah, that is massive. Yeah.
On the flip side of it, this is the kind of conversations we have with clients is, what do you need the money for? Do you need that rental income to live off?
Okay.
If you do, then you've got a double layer of tax. You've got a low rate corporation tax, which is 25% at the moment,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but then you've got to extract that money out and pay personal tax rates on it.
Dividends or-
So
yeah.
depending on where that income level lies,
Yeah.
there will be a tipping point, which is going to be the cheapest alternative.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
If you need to take everything out to live,
Yeah.
then there's that double layer. If you're quite happy, you've got other sources of income, you've got, I don't know, employment income, self-employment income from elsewhere, and that's enough to live off, and this is just a bit of a side hustle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
then you can leave that money in, you can pay the lower rate of corporation tax, 25%, and any profits can be rolled up and either invested back into the property
Yeah.
or new properties.
Okay, I mean, it is really, really interesting because people buy properties for all different reasons.
Yeah.
You know, they could have accidental landlords where they've inherited the property, or it
Yeah.
could be that they're actually buying it because it's their future pension. They don't actually have a pension, but the property's a pension.
Yeah.
So some really, really interesting points you make there, and definitely worthwhile looking into it because there are some brilliant options. So I think it is all about there's I'm sure there's more options, but looking at the transfer into a company. To transfer it into a trust, there are options there.
Yes.
And I think, getting those options looked at sooner rather than later
Absolutely, yeah.
to give you a good understanding of what they are.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not saying anything's going to happen in the autumn budget, but if something does happen in the autumn budget and taxes do rise, then you're not leaving yourself much time to sort it out.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you guys will be extremely busy if it goes the way that we all think it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think it will be.
I think so, yeah.
I'm guessing your lead's been blocked, has it, from sort of October, September, October, right through to next April. Yeah, you're not allowed to take leave, you know that.
We don't get holidays to start with.
Listen, thank you both very much for your time. Really, really appreciate that. We will definitely do a podcast on the trusts and maybe a bit more going into it on the company transformation
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
And I think it's really, really interesting learning about what you have to look at, because it's not just as straightforward as just buying an investment.
Well,
Yeah.
property incorporations as well come with lots of legal issues. If you've got mortgages over the properties, is what you do with those.
Yeah.
So
we touched on that.
like you said,
So many
the
things to
trust
think about.
situation is a podcast in its own right,
Yeah.
and definitely property incorporations is something that you need to get right
Yeah.
from day one.
Yeah.
It's probably bigger than a podcast.
But yeah, I mean, potentially we could do a webinar. But I think what one point you've made really, really clear to me today is that everyone's individual. Everyone has their own circumstances, and some Mr. A might have this and this and this, and Mrs. B might have this and this and this, and you've got to look at everything and say,
Oh,
right,
absolutely.
tell me your assets and tell me what you've got.
Yeah, no.
And we tailor everything,
we do,
don't we?
we
You know,
do.
it's got to be right for the individual. You've got to look at their personal circumstances, what assets they've got, and you've really got to make sure that they're comfortable
Yeah.
and that, it suits them and their family and what they want and need.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, one of the first conversations we have with clients is why are you doing this?
yeah.
Why do you want to do it?
Yeah.
And then whatever the driving factor is behind that, then our advice can be tailored
Tailored to
accordingly.
that, yeah.
But we need to know what you want to do 5 years, 10 years, 15 years time. What's your lifestyle going to be on retirement? Have you got enough money to survive if you put these assets into trust, or
Really good point.
give your shares away
How
in the
we're gonna-
company?
yeah.
So it's important to
5,
get.
10, 15, 20-year plan, it's your lifetime plan, it's,
Yeah.
I mean, things can change, but it's more important to have that constant communication with a specialist that can absolutely say, Mrs. B, you've got to look at this now because this is changing. If you don't, we can save you thousands of pounds potentially if you do this now. But it's always, it's really, really interesting, really, really interesting.
And I think with this kind of talk we've having today is there's a tendency for people to be reactive when the unknown is there.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this now without fully understanding the consequences of everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to sell this now, I'm going to put this into trust now to do this, to escape that.
Yeah.
actually, was that the right thing to do?
And it's a very, very, very good point. One of the reasons which has sparked me to do these these podcasts, these meetings, is to inform people about maybe the knee-jerk reaction of getting rid of your assets is maybe not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And there could be other options where you can keep them and and get the gain and not have
And
to
be
pay
more
it
tax
down.
efficient.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So no, really great today. Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Been
on
brilliant.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks
If
so
you'll
much.
have us back.
Absolutely.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much.